watching NotesIn9.
Hello, and welcome to NotesIn9. I'm David Leedy. Episode 92, using the Dojo Enhanced Data Grid in XPages, just scratching the surface of Dojo. Okay, before we get going in, I just wanted to throw up a reminder of some of the resources that I provide. Maybe you're finding, this video, but not some of the other stuff. But everything is centered around NotesIn9.com. But I also have this index site, index.notesin9.com, which is a little better to find older shows and shows by contributors and by tag and series and stuff like that. So that's a good resource to go to. And I also have the cheat sheet site, cheatsheet.notesin9.com. We can download the original cheat sheet and the social tools cheat sheet. There's a kind of a beta online URL cheat sheet and a demo application fake names database that you can kind of like start working with if you wanted to see how some of these things work. Okay, this also marks the final lap for my Drive to 99 event. It's going to end December 9th or possibly Monday the 10th, since that's a Monday. The goal is to get to 99, and whether we get there is anyone's guess. But if I do get there, it's going to be on the back of Paul Calhoun, who's given me an exceptional number of videos that I'm very thankful for, and he's kind of taking this event kind of personally. So I do appreciate all his contributions to this show and all the previous ones that he's done as well. So who is Paul? Paul is this great guy from NetNotes Solutions, nnsu.com, and he's a speaker. He's been all over the world doing the boot camps for the views. He's an instructor. He's created the TLCC courses, at least some of them or most of them for XPages in Java. He's usually at most conferences wherever free beer is served, I'm pretty sure. And he's a big fan of barbecue, and I'm not going to pick on him today because of all the videos he's given me. But he does specialize in training and mentoring, so if you do need help of a personal nature, feel free to reach out to him. I'm sure he can work something out for you and would be happy to do so. Okay, so today we're going to talk about, Paul has submitted a video on using the Dojo Data Grid in XPages, along with XML to bring the data in. And it's a really nice UI look and feel rather than just doing, a repeat control or view control on a web page. It's a little more eye candy. It's a little nicer experience depending on what you're going for your user. So with that being said, let's go to the demo.
Hello, this is Paul Calhoun with NetNotes Solutions Unlimited, back with NotesIn9 Drive to 99 initiative. In this installment, we're going to talk about using the Dojo Enhanced View Grid in XPages. So without further ado, we're going to kind of just jump over to Designer. In some of my previous videos, we talked about using components from the extension library, specifically the layout region. But a lot of people want to take advantage of some of those cool things, specifically the Dojo components, but they, for whatever reason, can't implement either the extension library or update pack 1 from IBM. And the enhanced data grid is one of those Dojo items that's really not that difficult to implement. So getting in and just giving you a little bit of background, the enhanced data grid is just an alternate view presentation for data. The enhanced data grid is either going to take an XML or a JSON data source, and it's going to allow us to then present that data in a more kind of a dynamic grid-like interface. So pictures kind of being worth 1,000 words here. Let's go ahead and run that and see what it looks like. If you're using 852 or below, then you can use the enhanced grid. It allows you to do on-the-fly dynamic sorting of individual columns. We'll talk about some enhancements to this in just a little bit. You can also do some basic filtering here. So if I wanted to just only return the barbecue joints that had the names start with the letter C, then I could do that, and I could display all names by clearing the filter. So it just allows, again, kind of a nicer presentation than a flat HTML table, or putting data possibly in the existing view control that comes straight out of the box. So to implement the Dojo Enhanced Data Grid, first of all, you don't need any additional plugins or software. You don't have to have the extension library. You don't have to have update pack 1. All of this functionality works directly out of the box. So to implement this, first I'm going to kind of go into the source here and you'll see that I've required 2 additional Dojo modules, the Enhanced Grid as well as the XML Store. And then to get that nice pretty presentation, then we also need to add some additional style sheets. So we're going to throw in the themes, the digit CSS grid. You can just copy and paste this directly from my sample database into yours to get that all set up. Then, again, in this example, we're using, if you have 852 or below, then I have an output script control because we need to create this dynamic variable, if you will. So we're actually going to create this grid variable, var grid is equal to null, right there. And that way it's available to both the grid control as well as our view filtering here. And then to actually implement the grid itself, then in the XPage events, we have that on-client load event. And that on-client load event is the one that's going to run the client-side script. And it's the only one that runs client-side script. So we're going to go in there, and that's when we're just going to set this up. So implementing this in Dojo, this is an implementation of programmatic implementation. So first of all, we're pointing to a URL, and this is the URL. In this particular case, it is an X agent that is providing us our XML. So if we kind of pop back over and take a look at that, the barbecue XML, if we display that in our browser, then what we're going to see is an XML output. And the reason that we wrote XML to get the data is because we need a relatively flat identification of the data. We're not using read view entries because read view entries on a view doesn't really describe the data, it describes the structure of the view. And therefore it's not really a good choice for sourcing data into your grids and your components. So we're actually created this. We have a pretty simple XML layout. We have our root tag of joints. Each joint is separated into name, city, URL, and description. So with that XML feed, then we can go back into our grid and we can say that's our store. And a store can be an XML store or it can be a standard store that reads in JSON data. Those are your 2 primary data formats. And we do the AdOnload function where we simply come in and say we're going to create a layout, and we set our default cell and we say we want these rows, name, city, URL, description, and that's really how we map up the column layouts with the actual XML. So field name corresponds to the node name in our XML output. These become our column headers, and then we can go in and we can put in some widths. Now, because one of the columns, specifically the URL, is actually having a special formatter, in other words, it's a URL link, I'm then going to come in and create this function that says, URL row index, and we're actually going to build an anchor link in that column, that's the website link for each of the joints that you can then click on. When we then say grid is equal to a new enhanced grid, we put in the query that says name is asterisk, so like when we first load the grid, then we see all of the joints. We point to our store, we reference the structure layout, we set an auto height to 25, and that's just going to go in and show 25 rows. We associate this to the grid node, which is a panel that we have, and then we call grid.startup. And that's it. I mean, there's not a lot of code there that's actually going to go in that we have to go in and, again, put into the onload there. So when we do this, we take our XML, and again, loading that up in the browser, then you'll see that we have our 4 columns. Again, we can click on those columns to sort. And if we wanted to filter those, then again, we could go in and say, okay, well, I only want to see the ones that start with W for whatever. Right? To implement the view filtering in 852 and below, then we actually have this name filter input, and then we have a couple of buttons down here at the bottom. So when we go in to filter those names, again, those are on-click client-side events, where we're going to go in and we're going to say, get the element by ID, get the value, we're proper casing it, to lowercase that to replace all of the values, and then say whatever the filter value is plus an asterisk. And then we say grid.filter name filter value return true, and that immediately applies the filter to the grid. To turn off the view filtering, then we simply go in and set it back to asterisk. So name is equal to asterisk, and that allows you some really cool capabilities. And again, that's in 8.5.2 and below. Now, if you have version 8.5.3, which a lot of people already have in production today, then in the Enhanced Grid, here's the documentation for the Enhanced Grid. Again, it's been available since 1.4. But one of the really cool things, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom of the Dojo Toolkit help page there. You'll see some references at the bottom. That is the... Oh, nope, not there. Let's go ahead and just type in that URL. Okay. Grid. Enhanced Grid plugins. So starting in version 1.6, if you search, just do a Google search on enhanced plugins, then you'll see that we have these additional plugins that are available to us that allow us to filter, export, print, do selector, drag and drop, pagination, cookies for persistence of the grid layout. So some pretty cool things. I've added an additional XPage here, which is the Enhanced Grid with filter. So the difference between the first example and this one is it's simply not going to have that input box there because the filtering is built into it. It also doesn't need or require that, or the output script control. So in the source, we have the same thing. We're requiring the same basic components, but now if we go into our source, you'll see that we've got the Enhanced Grid and the plugins. So drag and drop, nested sorting, indirect selection, filtering, as well as the store. So we have those. We don't need any additional style sheets. We just add those in our Dojo require. Then in our actual code, then you'll see that the basic structure is the same. We still have our store. We create our grid. We have our default cell layout. All of this is exactly the same. But now, when I create the grid, I have this new implementation called plugins. And I'm going to do the nested sorting, the drag and drop, and the filtering equal to true. And that adds some really, really cool functionality to our enhanced grid. So if we actually load that up in our browser, then you'll see the functionality that it adds. First of all is that I can select a column, and then I can drag that column anywhere I want. So I can move that city column to the beginning. Or I can move that city column over to the end. I can actually select multiple columns, and I can move those around as well. So that's really kind of a neat little feature, allowing rather than trying to come up with 14 different views for users, you present a base view of data that users can then drag and drop the columns and you kind of sort those the way they want. And speaking of sorting, now they have the ability to do this nested sorting, because I said that was equal to true. So that allows them to go in and do a primary sort. But if they're sorting on data a certain way, sending there, notice that when I hover over the columns now, there's a new sort option that's that second nested sort. So I can go in and say, okay, I want to do like a secondary sort. And if I sort that on a secondary level, then the next one I can do a tertiary sort. So I can go in and they can allow the user, without me writing any code at all, to have this primary, secondary, and tertiary sort capability going in there. So simply reload that. And then last but not least is this ability to do the filtering. Is rather now, in 8.5.2 and below, I kind of had to code in the filtering. And as you saw with 8.5.3 and above, this is just part of the enhanced capability of the grid. So there's no filter applied there. I can define a filter, or I can hover over any one of the columns and I can click there and say, okay, for example, I want to filter the name here. So I can say the name starts with, and just put in the letter C, similar to what I did before. Filter that out, and that's really kind of cool, because now then the only thing that I'm returning in my grid is 10 of 47 items, but I'm not limited to that. I can then simply then go in and hover over something else, and I can add, there's my starts with C, but then I can say, okay, but now I'm only interested in column 2, cities that start with L. So I can apply that filter. And the users can go in and put these items in, and they can see each of those, and they can just keep adding rules. They can match all the rules or match any of the rules. They can apply the filter. They can clear the filter, and that's going to reset it back to the way that it was. And it allows a very dynamic interface to interacting with the data that doesn't require a great deal of coding on the developer's part. So that is the Dojo Enhanced Data Grid. So you have an example of working with the 852 and below Enhanced Data Grid, and then 853 and above. Hopefully this will help folks out and provide them that alternative way to go in and start working with data. Thanks a bunch. Talk to you next time.
And that's the demo. I thank Paul for coming on the show, and I look forward to the next one. And if you have any questions for me, here's my contact information, and I thank you for your time.